Hi, I'm Bob Ethington.
And I'm Nick Nicholas.
And this is From Akron and Beyond. We are extra excited for this episode as we have two members of what is truly one of the most legendary musical ensembles in Northeast Ohio and beyond, and that is the Numbers Band. Bob Kidney and Jack Kidney. Gentlemen, thank you for being on today. We appreciate it.
Not only are we excited, we're honored.
And we are honored indeed. And so, Nick, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, well, there's so much to talk about. I remember being in 11th grade at the old Central High School, hearing that there's something going on Johnson Street at a place called The Berth. So, my friends and I, we walk up there, and there's these two guys playing. One's, acoustic guitar and harmonica. And, it was Bob Kidney and Gary Hawk, who I later found out who it was later. We went to see the Brambles, which were we interviewed, a few episodes back, and but this duo, hey Bob, did you guys have a name, or did you just go by, Bob and Jack?
Kidney and Hawk.
Kidney and Hawk, but you just blew us away. I mean, we're there to hear this electric, psychedelic rock band, and you guys with your acoustic set were just amazing. And this was 1968. Was that before the Numbers Band, or were we doing both at the same time, or what?
It was long before the Numbers Band.
Yeah, okay.
I was just out of high school.
Really? Yeah, so that was 1968. And when was a Numbers Band first, the Numbers Band?
I came back from a short stint in the United States Navy.
Oh.
And when I came back, I went to play at the old art museum when it was a small brick building.
Mm-hmm.
And they had shows in there because the Berth had been closed. Mm. And some of the people that I knew and I hadn't seen for a long time were there. Mm-hmm. So I played, and then Gary's band, Pig Iron, came out, and they played. And they were doing Paul Butterfield type stuff. And after they were done, the bass player, whose name was Greg Colbert, came over and asked me if I would come and talk to the band, so I did. And they invited me to come to a rehearsal, and I thought that would be fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Play the guitar in a band. And
sure.
And I look back on it now, and I didn't realize at the time, but Gary was not there.
Oh.
During that, when they asked me, invited me, but when I got over to the basement where they were rehearsing, I was told that Gary had left the band, and he was moving from Wadsworth to Kent, and they needed someone to front the band. So that's when I took over as the front man of Gary Hawk's band, Pig Iron.
No kidding.
And renamed it. It was not something I sought. It was something that was given. The opportunity was given to me.
Interesting.
And so I changed the name, and we played nothing in these small places, but until we started playing in the Cove, and we don't need to get into the details of that because it would take probably about an hour and a half. And besides, my brother would be sleeping by then because he's heard these stories 1,000 times. But that's how it happened, and that's how we ended up playing.
Now, you said you renamed the band from Pig Iron. Is that when 50, 60, 75 came in? Is that you right there?
That was the name of the band.
Beautiful. Now, nobody It's good.
156075 was the name of the band, and we were called the Numbers Band because no one wanted to be bothered remembering the numbers.
Where did those numbers come from?
Well, that's another very long story.
We got time.
We got time for that one.
Well, when I decided to name the band, I did not want to use any name that sounded to me local.
Okay.
I wanted something unique,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted something that would stand out in terms of other bands, and I thought of a lot of names, and it was funny. The one I almost used was called King Snake, which is like a blues type thing, and that ended up being some band from Akron years later. What was his name? Dave from Hammer Damage.
Zagar.
Oh,
Zagar had a band called King Snake. But anyway, I mean, I read a book called The Blues Fell This Morning by an English musicologist, and in it there was a chapter devoted to the numbers racket, and he wrote a book that mainly examined why blues songs were written about what they were written. Floods and alcoholism and women leaving their men and so on and so forth. And there was this one about the numbers racket, and in it where they talked about the numbers racket, and there were three very popular combinations that were used. It was back when they used to use the stock market closing.
Yeah.
And 1560-75 was one of them.
That is really interesting. I would never have guessed that.
That's amazing.
If you want to know what that means, you can go to the library and get the book.
Okay.
The one thing that was fascinating to me was after Terry Hind joined the band, about probably a half a year later, he came up to me, and he'd only been in the band for a very short time. He said, "You know what?" And you have to understand, Terry's kind of a puzzle freak.
We know Terry, yeah.
And he said 15 into 15 goes once, 15 into 60 goes 4 times, and 15 into 75 goes 5, 1, 4, 5, which is the universal progression, mostly in country music, blues, but it's also in Spanish music, Turkish music, all over the world. But that is not why I chose the band.
Okay.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
And at the time, that's pretty much what we were doing, was
Yeah.
blues. At
Yeah.
the time, blues, yeah.
Now, Robert, you're obviously rooted deeply in the blues. Do you remember what you first heard? Did you hear stuff on the radio? Did somebody give you a record? Go way back. Do you remember what first struck you?
Well, I mean, the first time I heard the blues was at a record store in Summit Mall. A friend of mine from high school said, "Listen to this," and they put on Junior Wells, and I felt like the music was from Mars. I'd never heard anything quite like it. I wasn't particularly fond of it, but years later, after the English thing happened, and Dylan and all those other people, and then that huge folk upheaval and all those things, I listened to everything. I listened to all of that stuff. I listened to jazz. And, a lot of these people were discussing these songwriters and musicians like Chester Burnett and other people.
Yeah.
I became curious, well, why is Rolling Stones doing this particular song by this guy, and who is he? And I just began to, research it and find out. And then I became fascinated, especially by Lightning Hopkins. And the thing that fascinated me about these gentlemen was the fact that although I could play practically anything that I heard the Beatles do or the Stones do or Dylan do, they were just mainly rhythmic chordal things. Some of the things were a little more complicated, like Norwegian wood and things like that. But it was basically chords and guitar and playing the strings. But when you listen to Lightning Hopkins, he was doing something that I did not understand.
Yeah.
His guitar technique, which was based on banjo playing and a lot of other things through years of history and so on and so forth. But he was playing this way on the guitar that I did not understand. I couldn't understand it. And so I became absolutely fascinated. Also, he was singing over this
Yeah.
while he was doing this.
Yeah, right.
And also it was giving me a certain emotional feeling that I got when I used to sing in the choir in church or in school. That's what really led me into music, was this emotional feeling I got when I sang, and that's why I followed into music, was because I was searching for that feeling.
Yeah.
And so that's why. And then the deeper I got into it, the deeper I got into it, the deeper I got into it, the deeper I got into it.
Yeah. Oh, it's a deep well, right? That music, there's a lot there. It just as a quick aside, I remember being in, I don't know, 6th grade or something like that. And I was living up in Detroit, and a neighbor of mine, he had this record, and one side of it was Josh White, and the other side was Big Bill Brucey.
Oh, yeah.
And he loaned it to me. It was my friend of mine, it was his dad who had the record, and he loaned it to me. And I didn't like the Josh White stuff that much, but the Big Bill Brucey stuff, I remember playing that record, just his voice and that acoustic guitar. And you said about music like from another world. That's exactly what it was like. I was like, I found it spooky but beautiful at the same time, and I think that was my introduction to listening to blues. I mean, I've never really played it, but
well, it didn't come from us anywhere near us. It was from another place.
Yeah.
Yes, that my mother praying. I hope she prayed for me some too.
I remember a few years ago, one of your shows, 2 or 3 years back, you were talking about how long the band has been together, and you didn't give a number, but you said half a century. And I thought that was really cool and important at the same time. But how many years has it been now that you've been together?
53.
53.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, there was a 50th anniversary show at the Beachland, right? Because
No, it never happened.
it never did happen because of the
COVID.
Okay, all right.
The 50th anniversary was at the Kent Stage.
Kent Stage, that's right.
Yeah, and with that happened.
Okay, yeah.
And it was that weekend,
Yeah, it was like,
it was all of a sudden,
right, it was over.
there was this huge, upheaval
Right.
of disease, and I had to call poor Cindy Barber and cancel the show,
Yeah.
and she was wiping the club down with bleach.
Right.
But I told her that, we had all agreed, Jack and I had discussed it, and we're not going to bring our age group into a public situation. And so, but then the funny thing was that she was let's put it politely, she was disappointed.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Okay. But the governor shut the state down.
Yeah.
That was on Saturday. Monday, he shut the state down.
Right. You did a responsible thing, obviously.
I remember the last musical event I went to was the Akron Music Awards, the Chris Butler.
That was 1 week later.
Yeah.
I was there.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. That was the world ended for 2 years.
Yeah, it was awful. So, Jack, when did you end up in the band?
I joined the band in March of 1973.
Okay.
So the band had already been going for 3 years.
Okay.
Back to, when I mentioned I saw Bob, that acoustic duo at the Birth. I also saw Jack at DeMarini's Bar and Grill on Exchange Street in a band called City Lights. And that was, that had to be 69 or 70. Was that your first band?
No, it wasn't 70.
What was it, do you think? 69?
Let's get something clear.
Okay.
In 1970, I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
So that would have been 1972-ish.
Oh, okay. But anyway, that was a great band too.
Hey, was Chris Butler the drummer in that band for a while?
No, he was a bass player.
Oh,
No, he
the
was a
bass
guitar
player.
player.
Okay.
Guitar player.
Yeah, Chris Butler, who's a good friend of all of ours. I didn't even know him back then, but he was in the band.
Yeah, he was in the band. Yeah.
And that was
Played
your
guitar.
was that your first band? Outside of the Numbers band? Or?
No, I played in rock bands through high school.
okay.
I played drums.
Okay.
I was in 2 bands at the same time in high school.
Now, how about you, Jack? Your musical background, stuff that you were listening to, was it a lot what your brother was listening to, or were you
Whatever he
on your
brought in the
own?
house, that's what I listened to.
Okay. So the influence went through Robert.
It's direct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Older
yeah.
brother, little brother.
I mean, I like
The money went through me. I had the money for the records, right?
Well, I mean, I listened to the Beatles a lot and the Beach Boys and all
Sure.
of that, you know.
Right.
And, you know, my aunt would take me to the grocery store and tell me to go hang out in the record section. She'd be back. So then she'd always buy me a record. You know.
One day she never came back.
One day she...
Her son, our cousin, had a really good record collection.
Yeah, Bo Diddley was the first time I ever saw a Bo Diddley record.
Oh,
was
wow.
through our
We
cousin
still
who's a
do.
little older than him.
We still do the song off Go Bo Diddley that I heard in that house.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he didn't even remember it when we played it.
No.
When we worked with him. I remember that.
Right.
He said, I said, Bo, we still do one of your songs. He goes, oh, yeah, what song is that? I said, You Don't Love Me, You Don't Care. And he goes, I don't know that song. You didn't remember. It's a great song.
I knew the harp part verbatim.
Yeah.
It was little Walter was blowing harp. and
Okay.
I learned it verbatim.
Nice.
It was like being in a copy band, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. Now,
Only nobody knew who that was or what, you know what I mean?
You had a residency at the old Cove before it burnt down for a number of years. That was like a tradition for a lot of us, just a Saturday night to go see you guys at the Cove.
yeah, I wanted to ask that because, I mean, I'm sure you guys played at first at wherever you could get gigs. I'm assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I do think that the Numbers Band, part of your guys' history is sort of being identified with clubs. The Cove is one, obviously JB's is the other, and I think that. Well,
The term at the time was house band. We were the house
house
band.
band, right? Yeah. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at here, I don't want to. I'm not trying to answer the question. I want to hear your answer, which is: did you guys feel that was a good thing to be playing at the same place on a regular basis, almost like, as Nick said, a residency? Did that help you refine your chops maybe a bit, just because you're in one place and you can kind of not have to worry about where is this place we're going or whatever? I'm just curious.
Yeah, obviously. Mm-hmm. I wasn't interested in necessarily becoming some sort of local hit-making machine.
Right.
I mean, if you listen to the music of the band, especially from that early period, what we were doing was learning to play our instrument in public. Mm-hmm. The only person who actually was sophisticated on his instrument when he came into the band was Terry, who played alto in high school and was in various jazz organizations, and he also worked at the Hi-Hat Lounge and some other things. So by the time he got in the band, he was pretty fully developed. Everyone else kind of walked in off the street. I didn't play electric guitar until I got an electric guitar. I couldn't afford an electric guitar. Greg Colbert, the bass player in the original Numbers Band from Wadsworth, bought me my first electric guitar. And I played the electric guitar and got an amp, and that was it. But the thing that when I listened to it is like we were learning how to play in front of other people.
Right.
The thing that the Cove offered us was 2 big things. Number one, we didn't have to move equipment.
Right. Yeah.
We were there.
Yeah.
The other thing it offered that really became the germ was that we could rehearse all week long, and none of us had jobs. So we could go down on a Wednesday and or a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday, and sometime Friday, and then play Friday night.
Right.
And we always took Monday off.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't remember for sure, but I don't think anybody in the band had a side job until after the Vietnam War ended.
I was the first one to get a side job,
Well,
but that was long after the Cove.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it offered other things.
oh, yeah.
Well, it offered everything, you know, depending upon what you like.
Right.
We would go down and rehearse, and we would rehearse after we were done. I mean, that we were the only thing in the room, week after week after week after week.
Yeah.
So,
speaking as a drummer, I can definitely see the benefits of having a place where you can leave your stuff and not have to keep moving it all the time. Right.
It was the same thing at JB's later after the fire, and we had to we went through a really dark period.
Yeah.
And then we ended up at JB's, and then again it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Mm-hmm. And then we were playing the Euclid Tavern every Tuesday.
Okay.
And then we'd play the Euclid Tavern the first Friday of every month for like 14 years.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
we did leave the Cove occasionally, and we, believe it or not, we hauled a Hammond B4?
B3.
B3 up the stairs
Oh, my God.
and took it where we were. And we did travel around a little bit, but not much. Not much.
I remember lugging a Porta-B and a Leslie speaker up those steps, in the Bizarros, and that was it. But you guys had the real B3, man.
Now, do you remember the years of the Cove? I mean, not remember them, but do you remember what years you were there?
1970 till it burned in 75.
75.
75?
I believe it was 70. Let's ask Jason. Give me my phone. No, I think it was 75, and then it was gone. And I think both of us would be dead if it hadn't burned down. I mean, it was a very powerful place with a lot of powerful things happening.
It had a heater like you see in factories or in gas stations that hung from the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you turn a heater on, the first thing that comes on is the fan,
Yeah.
and the second thing that comes on is the gas for the flame.
Right.
And it was broken.
Oh, man. Okay.
So the drummer at the time was down there, and when he turned the fan off, the thermostat's supposed to shut the gas off too.
Right.
But that was a malfunction there.
Gotcha.
So he walked out of the room, and the gas was going on the heater, and there was no fan blowing the heat, and the place caught on fire. And
Yeah. Oh,
we lost everything,
I was going to ask, you lost your equipment then?
all of it.
Oh, no. Wow.
The fire department had red tagged it. And, we were told how to beat that. And David and I were rehearsing. I left. And, we were both high. Okay, so he forgot. But the other factor was once a year they shellacked the entire inside of the bar.
It had wood walls.
Gotcha.
Everything was wood, and they would do the wooden wall and the poles and the booze. So I don't know what the hell we were doing down in there like that with all those fumes. That could be a reason why he forgot.
Yeah, the fuses.
You know what I mean? But so it was like a bomb, and it went off like a bomb.
Yeah.
And then we went to say JB's, and then somebody torched it.
Right.
It burned twice.
Yeah, it burned twice.
Yeah.
After the first fire, there were two really nice balconies because it was a 3-floor building.
Okay.
So the fire went up, but they cut it back. And I was envisioning, we were talking about like bringing Ray Charles in because now the room had opened up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
you look up, and I went, God, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
And somebody torched it.
Oh, man.
We won't get
We
into
won't
that.
cast aspersions,
No,
but we
no.
know who burned it down.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
No names, please.
Yeah, right.
There's well, yeah.
At this point, yeah.
There was potential, and we probably could still get in trouble.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't get into all detail. I mean, we can't talk about all that stuff. Man.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Hey, one of those fires, was that when the Magic Theater burnt down too? Remember that? That was
upstairs.
Yeah,
that was the third
was
floor.
it
part of
above
it.
the cove?
Yeah, it was the whole. Yeah,
That's it. 'Cause
We
that was
opened for some people up there.
That was I saw
10-wheel drive.
Yeah, 10-wheel drive.
I saw Alice Cooper.
We were going to open for Butterfield, but he got sick or something.
That was a great space, man.
Alice Cooper played.
That's why I saw there. Yeah.
Figure.
Yeah.
10-wheel drive, that was with Genya Ravan. Was that her name? The
Only thing
singer?
they had a tune that I liked called "Through the Eye of a Needle."
Okay. Yeah.
Well, they were working with like some of the heaviest people in New York jazz scene.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So as a horn section, they were a horn band. They were
Yeah.
like they were trying to come on like Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Right. This is From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with my co-host Nick Nicholas. Our guests today are Robert Kidney and Jack Kidney from the Numbers Band, and we are taking a deep dive into their history and trying to get to some of the stories that maybe some of you have never heard before. It's a fascinating story. I'm going to change the subject slightly because you guys are mentioning your years at the Cove, and I was wondering how long you were there. I think I mentioned you guys that I moved here when I in my junior year of high school, which was 1974, and I got a job at Yanko's restaurant, and this is going to lead to a bigger question, which is I remember to this day, the first time I ever heard of your band was there were some older guys that were working at the restaurant, and we were all trying to get the place closed because they were going to go down to the Cove to see you guys play. And I was too young at the time to go, and so I was just helping whatever. But I was into music, and they were telling me about you guys. And I always remember that this one guy, he said, his name was Bill, and he said, I'm telling you, you've never seen anything like these guys. They're so intense. That Robert Kidney guy, man, he's up there on stage and he's just so intense. He starts shaking his head back and forth and he's staring at you, and it's like they're so good, you're just mesmerized. And I've always remembered this. I mean, I'd never heard you before. I didn't know what you sounded like or anything, but that always stuck in my head. And having seen you now many times over the years and seen you just a month ago or whatever, and you guys are as great as ever, and we'll get to that later about how terrific the band remains. But I have a feeling I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you guys familiar, or are you aware of the effect that you have on audiences? Because you still have that.
Big time.
Yeah. You guys are an intense band to watch. It's very involving to watch you. It's a good thing, but it's also a powerful thing. Is this something that just is there beyond you, or is it something that I know it's not contrived, but is it something that just you have been aware of?
It's both. Mm-hmm. And, we don't, like our drummer, our most recent drummer, said, you bring it to the stage and you leave it there. And when we leave, we're emptied because we give everything that we have to the audience. That's what it's about. It's not about anything else other than that. I mean, personally, I want the audience to have an experience. I don't want them to necessarily do anything they don't want to do. I don't ask them to do anything. I don't ask them to dance. I don't ask them to put their hands together.
Right.
And we don't play songs that are familiar to them, but we do offer them a genuine commitment to the moment, and we offer them a primal energy that you get in certain other forms of music, but we offer that. And I think that, if you want to get philosophical about it, comes from somewhere else. But I mean, you have to be there and make it happen. And I also think that the band is committed to doing original material and committing themselves and to take risks. And I think that the people that come to see the band expect that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they want. Now,
Right.
a lot of people walk out on us, but they're not there. They find it disturbing, and it is.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between. I know the music that we're doing is like it's dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not comedic. I mean, some of it is comedic, but I mean, there's this theatrical thing happening that is not theatrical. It's the truth of the moment.
Right.
You know?
You guys sing the truth. I've mentioned that on stage a couple of times. Seeing you it's the truth.
It's difficult to phone it in.
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm phoning it in, it's because I'm probably running a fever
Yeah.
and sick.
Yeah.
Sometimes that makes it even better.
But it takes me all day to get over a gig.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once I get home and get up out of bed, I realize I've been run over by a truck. And that's not from drinking. It's from
Right. Yeah.
exuding.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I known you guys for so long, and I'd watched your band so many times before I actually, said a few words to you in person, Bob. I remember when I used to run Clone Records, not just the label, but I would sell magazines and other people's records. And I had an order for 25 copies of Jimmy Bell's Still in Town from the Netherlands. And so I hooked up with you and, gave you the money. I got the records and sent them off to the Netherlands. But, while you were here, you're also known in Europe. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, there's a lot to
Number
say, but-
one, we're not known in Europe.
Yeah,
we're known in Amsterdam. We're
did get to
known in
tour
Rotterdam, and that's another 2-hour story
in London too.
about this guy who went to Rough Trade Records in England and saw a crate of Jimmy Bell stuck in a corner. It was collecting dust, and he said, this is from Akron. So he bought it, and he took it to his record store in Rotterdam, right?
Yep.
And started selling it, and then it got into discos over there, and Jimmy Bell was a big hit in the discos.
It was going for like $60 a copy.
Wow.
Right. What was his? That's terrible. We can't remember.
Luke Bunt.
No, it was the other guy.
Oh,
Luke Bunt took the store over.
God.
Oh man, never mind. It doesn't.
Sorry.
Really, yeah,
Sorry,
whatever.
my
It's
friend.
been too long. He was a very interesting guy.
Peter Grout.
Right. And he would always say, "It was in the plan.
Oh yes, everything's in the
Everything's
plan.
in the plan." I don't know what plan this was.
But it was.
I don't know
plan.
who's discussing this plan with, but the whole thing, I found it a bit disturbing.
Jack, who was the guy from, I think, Denmark that knew both of us? That was that?
Jan Schmew.
Yeah, he stayed with me. He came to check out the Akron scene, and he stayed on my couch for a couple of days. And then you guys hooked up with him in Denmark.
I hooked up to him through Chris Butler.
Oh.
I was going to Europe, and I toured Europe, not musically, as a tourist. And so everybody I knew that knew somebody in Europe, I wrote a letter to, because that was the only way to communicate with them. And Jan Schmew responded and said that I was welcome to come to Copenhagen and stay at his place. So I did, and I was there for 2 days. And he said, my wife and I and the kids were going on vacation. Here's the key to my house. Just leave the key on the step and lock the door when you leave and stay as long as you'd like.
Nice.
Now, tell us a little bit about when you did play gigs there, and the David Thomas connection, things like that. I know there's a lot, but we got it all the time.
David Thomas.
From Perubu.
Yeah. was from Cleveland.
Right.
And he came to see us the night we played. The night we played when John Lee Hooker canceled,
Oh, yeah.
and we worked with that great piano player,
Jimmy Lee.
and we split the bill. John Lee Hooker couldn't make it, and this guy comes up to me, and he's got this giant Big Apple hat on. It looked like a garbage can cover back then in 1970s. He said, you got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy. And I don't know who this guy is. Got to meet him. I want you to meet him. I went over and I met him, and there was this big giant guy with curly hair. And he said, hello, my name's Crocus Behemoth.
That's what he went by, back then.
And that's how we met. And
He used to come see us at the Viking Saloon.
right.
He used to be a bouncer there.
Oh, no
And-
kidding.
Yeah.
So we got to know him and Peter Lochner, and one of my still closest friends, Tony Mohn.
Oh, I love that guy.
And David loves our music, and and he did everything he could in his power to help us and to make us, better known to as many people as possible. And it's a long list of things going all the way back to 80-something when he put that 45 out with Here on the Life and It's an Imagination, and everything he ever could do for us, he did. He brought us to Europe. He got us in the Royal Festival Hall, and we toured England with him. And the reason we were in L.A. was because of him, because he had this thing he did with a guy named John Thompson called Disasterdrome.
Yeah, we played one of those once.
Yeah, so, I mean, that it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
The guy that ended up owning the record stores was the one that booked us into Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in Rotterdam, and it was like if you stayed in Akron, we'd go play Canton one night and then come back to Akron.
Right.
And we'd go play Cleveland one night and come back. And
Yeah.
the furthest we would go would be like Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back to Rotterdam.
Yeah.
And we did it twice.
How did those shows go? Did you feel like you were well
I had
received?
a great time.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I thought, I had a better time when it was just him and I. We went again, and they had a stand-in bass player and a stand-in drummer, and that didn't work out too cool.
Yeah.
Luke
Yeah.
Luke Bunt is the guy who owned the record store, took it over from Peter
Grout.
Grout.
Like,
And
we
he-
played Gouda, but it's not Gouda. It's Gouda.
It's Gouda. Gouda.
Utrecht.
We were driving into Gouda, and they kept saying, we're going to Gouda. You should know Gouda. And I'm going, no. And he goes, well, you know, the cheese. I always thought it was Italian. Gouda, you know what I mean?
We were driving. We were
Well,
driving.
whatever.
We were driving with him one time. He was driving the car, and I said, "Hey, man, could you crack the window?" Right?
Uh-huh.
He goes, "You want me to break my window?"
But anyway, we did a tour, and it was just me and him. We played some rather large shows, and we played a lot of hostels and stuff like that. And then we came home, and then I get this call from Luke Bunt. We want to come over, and we want to be the rhythm section, play bass. And they had a drummer, and his name was
Ed, and he ended up in
Ed.
Dink.
He ended up in Dink. He came to America. He
Oh,
still lives
okay.
in America.
I think he's back in Holland. I saw a picture with him and his mom. He was sitting next to his mom. I think he's back in Holland.
Oh, well, that might be. But anyway, so we played with them, and it wasn't as much fun because I won't describe it and get into it. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It was just more difficult, you know.
Him and I played this club, and I can't remember. Schiedam, I think, was the name of the town, and the name of the club was the Podium.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, man, what
And
a
so
bizarre
we
place.
dressed. We were dressed. Tie, patent leather shoes. We were dressed.
Yeah.
And it was like a little local pub on the corner. And we walked in, and the people that were the regulars there were a few regulars there, they turned around and looked at us and went, oh, no. Oh, what are these guys going to do? Oh, please. You could just see it on their face. So we went in and set up, and we went around. We played the first set, and people started going back to the phone booth. And by the time we got done with the first set, the place was packed. And we did...
Go ahead.
We did a encore at the end of our first set. They wouldn't let us off the stage.
Wow.
And the podium had this little stage, and the guy who owned the club didn't speak much English, but he would work the lights, smoke reefer.
From on top of the phone booth.
From on top of the phone booth.
They had a double phone booth, and he would get up. It was next to the bar. He would climb a ladder up onto the phone booth and run a spotlight. And the I thought it was so surreal. I mean, we were on this stage, and it wasn't as big as this desk.
I said to him,
and it was a half circle like the circus. You know what I mean?
I said to him when we were
with
setting up,
footlights.
I said, is this the house? He goes, no, this is not my house. I went, oh, jeez. No, the speakers, you know. But he rolled up these Turkish joints with hashish in them, and he had about 6 of them. Because I went up the ladder to take a look at this, because there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
And he was a character, and his wife worked behind the bar, and her English was very good.
That's one story.
Yeah, that's. But we had a good time.
Yeah.
Tony was there. Tony Mamone showed up.
Yeah, he showed up. We
Oh.
mainly went over there because Luke Bunt was having an anniversary for his record store and invited us over simply to play the party.
In Rotterdam.
In Rotterdam of his anniversary of his record store, but then it expanded into something else. And
Does Tony Mamone still have a recording studio?
yes, he has a very nice recording studio.
All the guys in
It's
Peru.
not the one you were in. This thing is immense. It's a very high-end place. He's doing very well.
Great. Out of all the guys in Peru, he was, went out of his way to be nice to all the bizarros, when we used to play with him at the...
Tony's a very
Pirates
good person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Bob, you're really good at describing the kind of bands that, if I would mention the Golden Palominos to you, with Anton Fear, the great local drummer who went on to, a lot of fame in New York.
Yeah.
Right.
But the Kidneys had a relationship with the Golden Palominos.
I did not.
You weren't? It was
No.
mainly Bob?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got...
You almost did.
Well, almost. Don't count.
Anyway,
I got to stay home. And if
love
we
that.
want to get back to COVID when they shut everything down, it was wonderful.
I love that album that you have several appearances on, Bob. The Golden Palominos album.
Well, his thing was using singer-songwriters that he appreciated and would make these records with all these different singer-songwriters. And then he would do his interpretation of the song, and sometimes he would invite these people to come up, like myself, and sing the song over the music that he put together.
Oh.
That was his thing. And he did, you would know, a guy from the, he worked with a lot of very well-known people. He did Animal Speaks. It's the first thing he did. I got a phone call. I want to put Animal Speaks on. I said, "Who are you?" And so on and so forth. And he had Johnny Rotten sing it.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then Johnny Rotten belches and then goes into my song Animal Speaks. And then they also did, that's funny, you didn't write it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Funny to you. Anyway, I won't
wasn't
get
the
into
intro
all that,
that Robert
man.
was
I won't get
looking
into
for.
Johnny Rotten and all that.
Well, I wait for the daylight, and I wait eye to eye.
The thing that I remember about it that made me feel good was he also did a version of the song with Jack Bruce.
Oh,
Do you know who Jack Bruce is?
Absolutely.
Oh, I thought you might. Okay. Well, I like Jack Bruce, and so we opened for the Golden Palominos at what was then called the Pirates Cove, and then they came up, and Jack Bruce sang my song, and the first time in my life I had ever heard anyone perform a song I wrote, it was Jack Bruce's vocal. He was singing it.
Wow.
And that made me feel like real good.
That's very cool. Yeah.
The rest of it, the rest of the whole episode with the Golden Palominos was a nightmare that I will not discuss because I don't like to travel. And it was all about that.
Jack Bruce was in the Golden Palominos when we opened for him there in Cleveland.
Okay.
And he was a featured artist, so the band, the Palominos, were playing, and I got to sit in the green room with him, or the whatever they call it. And hey, Jack, we had a beer together. And we got to talking, and he was a really nice fella, very personable guy.
Yeah.
And he told me that his manager sold White Room for $3,000.
Oh, jeez.
And then he sold White Room and In the Sunshine of Your Love that Jack had written for $3,000.
Oh, man.
And then he looked at me and he goes, and that's why you're talking to me, and that's why I'm in Cleveland.
Oh, man.
Because he'd still be making money.
Sure. Yeah.
And he got paid $3,000.
Oh, man.
The other thing
Note to self.
Well, there's so many, that's half the history of the music business is people getting ripped off from it.
From day one, from Frankie Lyman to present.
The other thing I learned from the Golden Palominos is how to hate and despise the studio.
Really?
Yes. It is my own preference. I feel like I'm in a cage when I'm in the studio. I don't like it. Jack, you don't mind studio. You enjoy it.
I'm on a bunch of Perubu records, probably 5 or 6 different, where I just went in and it was just me and David and Paul Hammond.
Yeah.
Really? Well, that's a name from the past, man. Paul Hammond is such a good guy.
Yeah. Well, the studio. I think that people who don't play music but love music, they probably have a very different view of what being in a studio really is. I mean, I'm not going to claim like I have extensive experience in it, but I've been in some really nice studios, and no matter how nice they've been or how pretty rugged they've been, I think the word that usually comes to mind is tedious. It just seems like you're spending a lot of time, sitting on a couch and listening to things played back and seeing if you got the right sound on the snare drum or the singer sounds right or whatever. And it's not as spontaneous as you'd like to think of it to be. And I don't know. I'm not going to speak for you, Robert. That might be something that bugs you about it, though, is just that you seem like a very spontaneous performer, and to have to go in and be. You mentioned
I don't want to
use the word
discuss
cage.
this. I just don't want to discuss this. I'm going to have to put my foot down. I don't want to start raving.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. The whole discussion, as you say, is tedious. This discussion is tedious.
It's over.
It's tedious.
Okay.
We're done with that.
Although, we did have a pretty good experience with our last record.
That's a different whole ball game.
Yeah.
But it was made in a studio. But there was nobody telling us how to sound.
Right.
We were the producer.
Yeah.
We decided what we wanted to do.
Sounds great, too, though.
And if
That's
we
a
were
great
tired
album,
and didn't want to do anymore, we didn't do anymore.
When nobody in the studio wanted to do that record that way.
Yeah, well,
We had to fight tooth and nail.
Really?
Because we used no earphones, no baffles, no monitors. We
It was
walked in the
live.
studio, set up, and played.
Right.
Well, and if I don't see, here we go. We're still on this.
Oh, yes.
We
blame
need to
me.
move around.
I take the blame for continuing.
Well, that's all right. What you said was I'm glad you did, because people tell me constantly that this last CD we did which was called Endure,
Yeah.
is the best thing we ever did.
It's brilliant.
Next to Jimmy Bell. Everybody likes Jimmy Bell.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, that was live.
Live album, yeah.
Yeah, we walked out. We played for 45, 50 minutes, and the band took it up. We put it in the studio, and we played it back, and we mixed it with I'm not going to be able to remember his name. There was
John Neebe.
John Neebe, and
Look at me remembering all the names.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's fantastic.
Even the Dutch
impressive.
names.
you're good with you're good with names. My thing is the alphabet. If I can't remember his name, I use the alphabet.
Bob, we talked about Bob.
Are we moving on?
Yeah,
Thank
that's what
God
you
we're
wanted me
moving
to,
on.
so we're doing it.
Well, this is From Akron and Beyond. I am Bob Ethington with my co-host, Nick Nicholas, and we are here with Jack and Robert Kidney from the Numbers Band. Robert, we've been talking about, of course, just in the course of our discussion here, the local music scene and a lot of the local musicians. What are some of the places and some of the people that come to mind?
Well, other than the ones I already had mentioned, it made me think about how active the scene actually still is.
Yeah.
And you have Harvey Gold put out a CD a way back, and he works with the High Fives.
Right, High Fives, yeah.
And they're playing at Julie's, and Julie's is working so hard to have local music, like, Tracy's in there.
Yes, Tracy
and,
Thomas,
we
yeah.
play in there, so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the ones that gets a little bit overlooked is over in Kenmore now. Jim Ballard has sort of fostered a whole community of singer-songwriters working out of the Rialto Theater. And so, it's in Cleveland, the Beachland Ballroom.
Sure.
Cindy still supports us and a lot of other local people. And I just think it's important to mention these people who have committed so much time in their lives to music and for the sake of music.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that with Harvey's album, I played drums on most of that record. It was a fun album to do.
You played drums.
Yes, on most of it.
I
yeah,
need
no,
to speak with you.
Oh, okay. Well, you can find me.
Some beautiful work on that record.
Well, thank you. Boy, am I glad I brought that up.
And it's also wonderfully produced.
Yeah, it's a very cool album.
It really is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good music on it. And Tracy's record, I call them records, is also wonderful.
Yes.
And she's still moving forward, although I have to remind her that she needs to do that sometimes because she loses her confidence, which is part of her trait as an artist. I guess it's true with a lot of artists. I never have had that problem. I've just been like a big old pain,
Bob, we're talking about the Golden Palominos, but Jack, tell us a little bit about Frank Black and the Pixies and your involvement there.
You know what, though? I think this is a good breaking point because we're kind of running out of time for this episode, and so we will begin there with part 2. There's too many good stories and too many things we'd like to talk to Robert and Jack Kidney about. So we will end this episode here. This has been From Akron and Beyond. I'm Bob Ethington with Nick Nicholas, and stay tuned for part 2 next week. See you then.